God is so good to reveal his heart and his mind. Before we go into anything, I want us to turn to Mark 16. I think there's some very fascinating things that the Lord wants to show us. You know, you and I cannot be what you and I are. You and I cannot experience what we are to experience without this fact. I just want to say one thing. You can preach Christ crucified forever. But if we don't understand the resurrection, we only have half the message. Jesus could have died 1,000 deaths on the cross. If he would have stayed in the grave, it would have made no difference. The pinnacle of why you and I stand and why there is a heaven and why there is a glory is because of resurrection. When Paul preached the gospel, he preached what's called the full counsel of God. So when he preached the good news of the gospel, which is salvation, which is what all you and I are required to do. That he went into the grave, but the message never ends there. All right? The message has to go beyond two other realms. One of them we'll deal with, and maybe we'll get a little bit into the other. The resurrection and then the ascension. In fact, I'll even go another step. If Jesus hadn't ascended, but I want you to think about this. If he hadn't ascended, what next? Since he defeated death, hell, and the grave, if he hadn't ascended, he'd still be walking the earth. For what purpose? He also said, if I don't go, then the helper, the comforter, cannot come. So when God ordained and instructed this whole historical reality, there was a dimension behind it that you and I are to grab a hold of. I have to live in resurrection life. I have to live in ascension life. And I have to take that resurrection life and give it to others. Now, first of all, let us go to Mark chapter 16. I'm going to try not to keep you more than about 4 hours today, because I understand today, all right? But I want us to go to Matthew chapter 16. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to read the first verses, and then I'm going to stop and then go where I really feel I want to go. Now, when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices that they might come and anoint him. Very early in the morning, on the first day of the week, they came to the tomb when the sun had risen. And they said among themselves, who will roll away the stone from the door of the tomb for us? But when they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, for it was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a long white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. He said to them, do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He's risen. He's not here. See the place where they laid him. Now, in defense of these ladies, the custom of the day was to anoint the body, was to do what would be correct. We know that when a loved one dies, we have a funeral. We prepare the body. We make arrangements. And, you know, it's a very sad thing, but yet at the same time, it's about honor. It's about respect. It's about making sure we do what is right in honor and respect of the deceased person, but also the family. Now, what is interesting about this is we come to this event where these women had come to prepare the body. That tells me something. They were seeking to honor Jesus, but there's something they didn't get. They came expecting a dead body to be in that tomb. So there's something about resurrection expectation that they actually didn't have. The story sounds great. They came to minister to his physical body. No doubt that was not a direction from the Lord. That was not a Jesus instruction. Because why would he tell somebody to show up where he is intended not to be there? Right? Jesus had no inclination about still being there. Yet you have these ladies that show up out of their heart, meaning well, but doing the wrong thing. You can do with an open heart, with a right heart, with right intention, yet do the wrong thing. Jesus had no intention of being anointed by these women. It's interesting because when you look at the story of Mary and Martha, and I heard Bill Johnson say this one time, you know, Jesus offended these ladies because he didn't eat a meal that he had no intention of eating. And one of the sisters got offended because he made a meal that he wasn't going to eat. See, sometimes we can presume what we think God is going to do. We can presume by our traditions what is right or what is correct or what is dutiful. And yet he still not be there. See, the reason we have to have the Holy Spirit is we have to understand what it means to walk in resurrection life. They were not walking in revelation. They were walking in the tradition and the customs of the Jews. There's a dead body, let's go anoint him, let's go wrap him up. They don't want to be anointed as a dead man. He don't want those spices upon him, because he has no intention of being there when you arrive. Remember, you see, he says, I'm the resurrection and the life. So we have this bit of a dilemma. And there's a number of things that you can really derive from this. And even the conversation on the way to the tomb, well, who's going to move the stone? We don't have any bustly men that's going to move this stone out of the way. See, they were thinking like men. They were thinking human. I see this in Matthew 16. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to do, but there's a huge amount of unbelief there. Because they're expecting to find a physical body. Either that, or they didn't kind of understand what resurrection meant. Best I can tell, there's only two things that can define us. We're either dead or alive. You're alive, all right? Life is coming out of you. You're either dead or you're alive. You live in resurrection life or you live in death. What Paul calls, we are dead in our trespasses and sins. These women lacked understanding and revelation of the fact that Jesus says, notice this, notice how none of the disciples were there. Whether they truly understood or believed what Jesus was doing, they weren't there. You can almost argue that there was a huge amount of fear, intrepidation, locked inside. There's no question that they were curious about what was really going on. Nevertheless, and I've done a little bit of research on this, that burial customs would have been done by men or women. So that's why you probably have the women, whatever the decision that was. No doubt, if I can say this, Mary's, although she treasured all these things in her heart, we get the idea that Mary's leading this little group. She didn't get it. She would never, if you knew there was going to be nobody there, why would you have gone? So the resurrection story has incredible implications toward what we do and what we think. We just seem to accept the resurrection event as just something that happened. We have to learn to think resurrection. And the whole context, yes, like Paul says, I die daily, and we go to the cross, but like I've been preaching for weeks, you've got to be thinking resurrection. He preached, and he preached, and he preached, and he proved that death was not going to have a hold on him, and yet these women expected him to be there.